The season's starting to wind down to a close. It's been difficult. We're well behind this season right now. It's a struggle.
A $75 million secret lay frozen deep in the Yukon, guarded by a place called the Widow's Cut. No one dared to enter until Parker Schnabel arrived. He gambled his entire season on a high-tech plan that uncovered a hidden path to a legendary gold vein. The discovery was so massive, he had to seal it off from the world immediately. The forbidden ground. The danger was brutally real. The entire area around the Widow's Cut is smothered in what's known as permafrost. This isn't your average frozen dirt. It's a layer of earth, rock, and ice that has been frozen solid for thousands of years, making it as hard and unforgiving as concrete. Trying to dig into it is like trying to punch a hole through a mountain of steel.
As temperatures rise, the winter snow and ice flood the cut, creating a thick black mud stew.
The constant, terrifying risk was a catastrophic collapse. Imagine multi-ton chunks of frozen ground suddenly giving way, crashing down into any man-made hole with the force of an explosion. It was a geological time bomb waiting to be triggered. As if that wasn't enough to scare people away, the ground itself held another secret threat: water. Any attempt to dig deep risked tapping into hidden underground springs or melting the delicate permafrost. This could cause an instant massive flood, turning a mine shaft into a muddy grave in seconds. The water would not only compromise the stability of the shaft walls, but it would also swallow millions of dollars in heavy machinery, destroying an entire operation in the blink of an eye. The legend of the Widow's Cut was born from the very real failures of those who tried before. Old-timers spoke of a group of Swedish prospectors in the 1930s who vanished on that very claim, their equipment supposedly still buried deep below, a silent monument to the ground's deadly power. The land was said to be part of a strange geological anomaly, an ice island within the Klondike, where the permafrost was deeper and more unstable than anywhere else, almost as if the land itself didn't want its treasure to be found. With all these life-threatening factors, it's no wonder the site sat untouched. Everyone looked at the Widow's Cut and saw a fool's errand. The whispers of a massive gold deposit were tempting, sure, but no amount of gold was worth that kind of risk. Yet Parker Schnabel isn't like everyone else. Where others saw an impossible barrier, he saw a challenge. He saw a mountain that needed to be climbed, and he was absolutely not going to walk away from it. He was about to bet everything on this forbidden ground, but even he didn't know that the biggest challenge wasn't the frozen earth, but the secret it was hiding. Facing down the Widow's Cut, Parker knew that brute force would get him nowhere. The old ways of mining, just digging and hoping for the best, would be a death sentence here. Instead of fighting the frozen monster head-on, he decided to outsmart it. He was going to wage a war not with dynamite and steel, but with brains and technology. This was a move that would set the stage for an unbelievable breakthrough, but it was a massive gamble. Every day spent surveying was a day not spent digging, burning through fuel, money, and precious time. The secret weapons in Parker's arsenal were tools the old-timers could have only dreamed of. His crew broke out a state-of-the-art LiDAR system. LiDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging, is a game-changer. The device shoots out millions of laser pulses per second, bouncing off the ground and returning to a sensor. This data creates an incredibly detailed, three-dimensional map of the terrain, revealing every bump, dip, and crack with pinpoint accuracy. It essentially gives the miners X-ray vision, allowing them to see through the thick brush and loose topsoil to the bedrock below. On top of the LiDAR, they deployed advanced drone mapping. Drones flew over the entire claim, capturing thousands of high-resolution images. When this visual data was stitched together with the LiDAR map, it created a digital model of the Widow's Cut, so precise it was like holding the entire landscape in the palm of your hand. This combination of technologies was revolutionary. For decades, since the 1980s, miners had tried and failed to find a safe way into this ground. They were all working blind, but Parker was about to turn on the lights. The initial plan was to dig a brand new ramp down into the pay dirt, but the data from the drones and LiDAR painted a grim picture. It confirmed their worst fears about the permafrost and the risk of flooding. A new ramp would be too dangerous, too expensive, and would take far too long. The clock was ticking. The Yukon mining season is brutally short.
All right, here's the first scoop going in.
He's one step closer to finding out if his new operation will secure his mining future.
They couldn't afford to waste weeks on an approach that might fail. With resources dwindling and the pressure mounting, they had to find another way, and they had to find it fast. The team was on the verge of a catastrophic loss before they even moved a single shovel of pay dirt. The answer they so desperately needed was buried in the gigabytes of data they had collected, a digital ghost waiting to be found. Staring at the digital maps, the crew pored over every detail, searching for a sign, a weakness in the Earth's defenses. And then they saw it. Hidden beneath decades of tangled, thorny overgrowth was a faint anomaly the lasers had picked up. It was a collapsed vertical shaft, a forgotten relic from the original mining operation that had been completely lost to time. The truth that no one expected was that the path to the treasure wasn't about digging a new way in, it was about finding the old one. Their high-tech survey had done what no one else could. It had found a secret entrance. The precise measurements from the LiDAR data were astonishing. The collapsed shaft plunged more than 40 meters straight down. That's over 130 feet into the darkness. It was a direct line to the heart of the mine. This was their shot. Instead of waging an all-out war against the surrounding permafrost, they could focus their efforts on this one critical point. It was still an incredibly dangerous plan. Reopening a collapsed shaft is one of the riskiest jobs in mining. The ground was unstable, and one wrong move could bring the whole thing crashing down on top of them. The mood on the site shifted from frustration to a kind of tense, focused energy. After careful examination, they knew this was their best, and perhaps only chance. The team got to work on the terrifying task of stabilizing the shaft. This was a slow, nerve-wracking process. They used heavy-duty reinforced steel beams to build a cage, a protective skeleton inside the old shaft, holding back the immense pressure of the frozen earth. It was Parker's expert crew, with their years of experience, that made the impossible possible. They worked methodically, creating a safe enough pathway to finally descend into the mine.
I started my life here, and my goal is to see if there's a lot better ground out there that we could be mining.
That had been sealed for generations. You can just imagine the feeling of relief and excitement that washed over the crew. After weeks of staring at an unsolvable problem, they now had a direct path to the gold they had been dreaming of. They were no longer fighting the entire landscape. They were following a map left behind by miners long gone. The darkness of the shaft beckoned, promising a treasure that had been guarded for nearly a century. As the first members of the crew prepared to go down, no one could have possibly imagined the sheer scale of what was waiting for them at the bottom. The descent into the reopened shaft was breathtaking. As the crew made their way into the heart of the formerly inaccessible mine, the air grew colder, and the only sound was the drip of melting ice and the hum of their equipment. What they found at the bottom wasn't just good pay dirt, it was the stuff of legends. They broke through into an untouched, quartz-rich gold vein. It was a sight that made every second of risk and hard work worth it. The vein glittered in the beams of their lights, a pristine, pure deposit of gold locked within the rock. Parker's on-site geologist was stunned, later describing it as the cleanest and richest natural deposit he had ever seen in his entire career. There was no time to waste admiring the view, though. The team knew that in the competitive world of the Klondike, whispers travel fast. The news of a find like this would spread like wildfire, and they couldn't risk other miners trying to jump their claim or get a piece of the action. A frantic, driven energy took over the crew. They had to get as much of that gold out of the ground as possible, as quickly as possible. With that urgent mindset, they worked relentlessly around the clock. This is where it gets absolutely wild. That non-stop, grueling effort paid off in a spectacular way. In just over 72 hours, 3 straight days of back-breaking labor, they extracted more than 4,000 ounces of gold from that single vein. For perspective, for many crews, a haul like that would be a fantastic result for an entire season. Parker's team did it in 3 days. When they finally paused to do the math, the number was almost life-changing. That single cleanup was worth more than $10 million. The single haul was enough to cover almost all their costs for the entire season. Fuel, wages, transportation, and equipment repairs, with plenty left over. The immense pressure that had been building on the team suddenly lifted, replaced by the sheer thrill of a massive victory. It was a season saver, a powerful confirmation that their gamble on the Widow's Cut had been the right move. But this incredible $10 million score was just the beginning. It was just the first taste of a much bigger, almost unbelievable treasure still lurking deeper in the earth. The lockdown and the whispers. Word of Parker's $10 million haul spread through the Klondike with impossible speed. It was the kind of news that stops everything, the talk of every bar, supply shop, and rival mining camp. Almost overnight, the forgotten Widow's Cut became the most famous piece of ground in the Yukon.
As winter descends on the Yukon, Parker Schnabel finds himself in an unfamiliar position.
The season's starting to wind down to a close. It's been difficult. We're well behind this season right now. It's a struggle. It's only going to get worse.
Rival miners, government inspectors, and curious locals were buzzing. Everyone wanted a look. Everyone wanted to know if the legends were true. But as soon as the scale of the find became clear, Parker made a shocking move. He shut everything down. Access to the site was immediately and completely sealed off. Gates were locked, new no trespassing signs went up, and security was put in place to watch the perimeter around the clock. To the outside world, it seemed extreme. Why hide such an amazing success? This is where the conspiracy theories began to fly. On internet forums and in late-night conversations, fans and critics of the show began speculating. One popular theory was that the entire find was being exaggerated or even faked for television ratings. Had the show's producers orchestrated the drama to create a blockbuster season? It seemed plausible to some, who pointed out how perfectly the story was unfolding. Another, darker rumor suggested that the find was so massive that government agencies were already moving in, looking for a way to claim a piece of it through taxes or environmental regulations. Some whispered that Parker was locking the site down not to keep rivals out, but to keep officials from seeing the true scale of the operation until he had his legal ducks in a row. The most persistent theory, however, was that the reported numbers were a lie, not because they were too high, but because they were too low. The whispers claimed that the $10 million cleanup was just a fraction of the real total, and that the $75 million estimate for the entire vein was a conservative number meant to manage public perception. Was Parker sitting on a $100 million vein, or even more? The truth was simpler and more pragmatic. Parker knew that a find of this magnitude made him a target. He was protecting a legitimate, legally filed claim from the greed and jealousy that always follows a big strike. This wasn't just about another pile of gold. To Parker, this was the big one. The discovery that validates all the lean years, the breakdowns, and the endless work. It was a legacy find, and he wasn't going to let anyone, from nosy competitors to conspiracy theorists, jeopardize it. The lockdown created an information vacuum, and the silence from Parker's camp only fueled more speculation, turning his historic find into a modern Klondike mystery. While the outside world gossiped, Parker's team was focused on one thing: the future of the vein. After the initial gold rush, a careful examination of the geology revealed something that changed the stakes entirely. The $10 million score wasn't the end of the treasure. It was just the tip of the iceberg. The quartz-rich vein was far larger and more extensive than they had ever imagined. It didn't just stop a few feet from their shaft. It continued, a glittering ribbon of gold snaking deep into the earth. With a find this big and so much secrecy, do you think we're even being told the real story? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.